Hi everyone, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. My name is Osereme, and in today's video we are going to finish up the making of this overbust corset. In my last tutorial I shared with you guys how to go about the pattern drafting, and today I'm going to be sewing it together. I absolutely love how this turned out because you can style it in several beautiful ways. You can see on one side I'm wearing it with a trouser, and on the other side I styled it with a circle skirt. For the sleeve, I just only draped that, which is actually very easy. So if this is something you're interested in, keep on watching and let us get started. Alright guys, so in the last video you guys saw the pattern drafting and the cutting out of all of these pieces. So now one thing I went ahead to do was to cut out lining pieces for everything that we cut out in the last video. Before I went ahead to cut them out, I made sure to iron stay to the wrong side of my pieces to just make the fabric strong. So now we are going to join the front pieces together first. So this is the center front one and center front two, all right, and then we have the side front. So these pieces are going to be the first ones I would join together. So the center front piece, you just open it into two, just like I've done here, and then you place one of the center front two, this one here on this side, and we're going to go ahead and like pin it down. So it's actually very simple. So I'll pin this down now from the bottom all the way to the top, and do the same thing for the other side. Now, after pinning down your center front pieces, you will already see that it's having that bustier shape going on here. So now I'm going to finish up with the side front pieces. I'm taking off the pattern paper and the lining. So this one will be here and this one will be here on this other side. So this will complete my patterns. So I'm just going to pin down these ones to this side, and after which I'll just go over to the sewing machine and stitch down all the areas that I'm pinning down right now. So now these are all our front pieces pinned together. I will do the exact same thing for the lining as well. Now for the back pieces, just as they are arranged, I will go ahead and stitch them together as well. So guys, after making my stitches and going ahead to iron all my seams open, you can see what I have on the front. Now I've not even padded or done anything here, just the pattern drafting and the way we cut out the bustier. You can see how our bustier is sitting perfectly. You can already tell where the bust is supposed to be here. Now for the back pieces as well, I have gone ahead to stitch them down like I said, all three pieces together for both sides, and made sure to iron my seams open, and did the exact same thing for the lining pieces as well. Now for the lining part of the front, before you go ahead and stitch it down, what you do is you might need to pad the bustier area. That's just these three pieces, not the other last two, just the first three pieces at the middle. So now if you have a soft wadding, that's a padded fabric, a very soft one, you can go ahead and use it. So this one here, you just go ahead and cut it out on your padded fabric. Now this pattern fabric here that I had was too thick, so even though I cut it out to just show you guys how you should go about it, I decided not to use it. So instead what I did was to just iron multiple layers of stay to the three areas that I needed to be stronger. I added up to like 4 layers of stay to it and went ahead to stitch down the pieces. Now you can see it's not as strong as what you would have if you use like a padded fabric, but the padded fabric I had was just too thick and I didn't want it to be so thick. Okay, so if you have a soft one, go ahead and use it. If you don't, you can just use multiple layers of your stay on the bustier area alone, all right, just like I've done here. So after which I went ahead to join my pieces together. So now on the bustier area, which is the curved area where you can obviously see where your bust is, I am going ahead to mark the area where I'll be having my caging. So first I marked all the way around the curved area where you can easily tell like the bustier curve that comes with the stitching. And next I'm marking a line across the center of my bust here. Okay, I'm not going to be doing a lot of bone channels, so I'll have one through the nipple to nipple measurements here, and then I'll have one at the middle. Now you can actually create more lines for your bones. More lines are actually well advisable for people who are very busty, because this is supposed to help hold the bust area firm. All right, so now let's go over to the sewing machine and start stitching these Regiline bones on the channels that we have created. Make sure you're using Regiline bone because this is the one that you can stitch on. So let's go back to the sewing machine. So now I'm going to be starting with the center one here. So I'll place my bone on it and I'm going to start sewing. When you're sewing, I would advise that you put your machine on the gather stitch so that the bone is not like stretching and hanging in any way. You want it to be as flexible as possible. So I've made my first stitch and then I'm going to go ahead and turn and make the other stitch very close to the other edge. When you are doing this, do not stretch the bone in any way. Make sure you are not stretching the bone. Just make sure that it is sewing naturally, just the way it comes. Make sure it sews like that. So I'm done with this for this first two sides. That's for the one we're placing at the center. So now my next bone channel is going to be placed on the stitching allowance that I have here. So like I said before, make sure you're using your gather stitch and make sure you are not dragging it in any way. Just allow it form the way it came. And for your bustier area, you need to arrange your bustier very well so that it doesn't now become you don't now stitch on it mistakenly and becomes flat in any way. So you want to make sure it is well opened so that the bustier retains its shape, but at the same time making sure that the bone is still not stretched in any way. I hope you understand. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it out whenever it gets to the area where it's supposed to end that I marked. So now this is what I had after I was done making all the straight lines. Now I'm going to make the one that will come across. So I'm going to start from here, this other line that I made to come across. So from here I'm going to start stitching it down. Like I said, the same principles apply. Make sure you're not using a very tight stitch that will start dragging it. Make sure it is very free as you're sewing it down. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and place this now all the way across, just like you see me doing like this. And of course, when it gets to where you want it to end, just go ahead and cut it out. Do not stretch it, because why I'm stressing this is that if you stretch it or you just do some kind of weird stuff going around, you will notice that by the time you're done, it might end up looking flat. Your bustier area would end up looking flat instead of actually having the curve that the channels were supposed to give. So you have to be very, very like intentional with what you're doing here. Don't stretch anything and make sure you're allowing the bones to just sit perfectly the way they are curved. Okay, so now this is what I have so far. You can see it's already curving by itself, and I've not really even finished everything because I'm not busty. I'm not going to have too many like channels here. So the last one I'm going to do is just the one that comes across from here all the way around. So guys, after stitching down all the channels, this is what I had. These were the areas I wanted to place it in red. So now I also decided to just place bone channels on my stitching allowance for the body areas. So these ones are just like on the areas where we had our joining on the body part. This is not the bustier area. So it's actually just very simple. Just go ahead and place your bone and stitch it all the way across the straight line. Now this is quite helpful because it just helps you give the whole corset strength, as you have also like given bone channels to the lining part. But this is not compulsory at all. If you don't want to do this, it is totally fine. So just like I did on all the other sides, I just went ahead to top stitch this on both sides, just like you see me doing like this. And that is basically it. Now we are fully done caging the whole bustier and body part of the lining area. So this is what I have. So I'm going to go ahead now and iron this out. When I iron my pieces, I like to place my cotton fabric on top of it, just because my iron has been doing the most lately. It's been burning almost everything, so that's just to like give precaution. So when I iron out the bustier area, I make sure to always put the ironing ball underneath the tailor's arm so that the bustier area doesn't become flat when you iron it like that. You don't iron any bustier flat on your table. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and flesh the bustier area of this corset. And what I'm going to be doing is, first I will place my hem gum. Now if you do not have this wide one, I have a very wide one which is just perfect. I know there's the one of like 1 inch that you can also use. You just have multiple lines of it on top of your corset, so you can use that one as well. So I have this big one, so I just cut several pieces of it on top of the bustier area, and I'm going to be fleshing it with this white fabric here that is called fiber. So this is what I'm going to be using. You can also use stay here if you do not have fiber. So once you've placed it, go ahead and start ironing it out, just like you see me doing like this. Because you place the hem gum on the inside, it will actually just gum together. So once you've ironed it, go ahead and cut off the excess, making sure to follow the shape of the bustier. Guys, make sure that when you're ironing out this area that you have your tailor's ham underneath. Don't iron it flat, please. So after I was through ironing out everything, I went ahead to trim off all the excess, and I'm still trimming off a little bit of the fiber from the areas where I'm going to be making my stitch, so that it's not too thick in these areas. All right, so I'm going to also trim it off from here as well. Just make sure everything looks neat by the time you're done. So now this is it. If I turn it over to the wrong side, to the other side, this is what I have. So you can see how neat it looks. So now when you cover it up with the fabric, it will look something like this. But before we do that, we need to create our bone channels. To do this, I'm going to be covering my bones with this fabric here. Now I'm still using the Reggie line bone here, so I will now use it to stitch it on the fabric like this, but I'm going to be showing you guys how I do this on the sewing machine. But before we do that, let's go ahead and draw the channels. So first I'm going to draw out a straight line at the center of my corset here. So I'll just mark the center here, and I'll just draw a straight line to connect both of them. Next, I'm going to be having a bone channel on this line that is coming from the bustier area where we joined before. So from the under bust here, I'll just draw a line across and have another one here. So I just did this roughly. So basically, I'll measure what I have on the other side and just replace it on the other side here, so that what I have is the same thing on both sides. So I'm just doing it from the under bust here to this point. The line is going to come from the top. I'll just follow the stitch line that I have coming from the bust line, and then on this other one, this last one here, I'll just mark a point here and just take it all the way up. So just like I've done here, make sure that what you have on one side is also repeated on the other side. So these are all the bone channels. You can decide to use black bias for your bone channels. I know this would have looked very nice, but I didn't want black bias on this. I just wanted the upper parts to be plain and have the same fabric. So now to do this, I have this fabric here, okay? So I'm going to place my Reggie bone like this inside the fabric, okay? And then I'm going to start stitching it on the lines that I created. So you can see this line here, right? I'm going to place it on the side of the line, and I'm going to start stitching. Now when you're making this stitch, try not to actually stitch on the Reggie bone itself. Try to make sure that you're stitching very close to it. You know, as you've folded it into two, you can actually tell where the bone is ending, but if you mistakenly stitch on it, is fine. So just go ahead and continue to cover this up with your fabric. Make sure it's at the very edge of your fabric, and then go ahead and continue sewing on one side first until you get to the end. So guys, when you're done, you should have it looking something like this. So there'll be like excess on the side where you stitch down. Make sure you're not cutting out the actual fabric itself. Just cut off some of the excess from the bias fabric that you cut out earlier. So just go ahead and cut off some of the excess like this, and then you're not going to fold in the bone to cover up that area. So you just fold it to cover up the area that you stitched down. You notice that the bone will not look really neat. So once you have done that, just go ahead and make a top stitch on the bone from the bottom all the way to the other end, and then just top stitch the first part you stitch before again. So this is what it looks like. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for these other bone channels here. So I'm passing it through the one that has the bust area shape. That part is curved. So when you're doing that part, that's why I decided to film that part as well. When you're doing that part, you have to make sure that the fabric is not in the way. You have to continuously make sure that that curve is opening well as you stitch this down nicely. So once you're done stitching it down on one side, just like we did on the other part, trim off the excess and then just fold it in and make a top stitch. So after I was done with all the bone channels, this is what I have. All right, now you can see what the inside is looking like. Now this bust area, I always like to break the bones a bit so that your bustier area looks curved as well. It continues looking curved. It must not look flat. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and iron this out. On the bustier area, I'll continue to put my tailor's ham when I'm ironing it out.
And for the back pieces as well, I've also gone ahead to place my bone channels in front here. I know it's not showing so much just because it's the same fabric, right? So now this is it. I've placed it here and here. So now this is all for this. The back pieces, remember I placed bones on the inside as well. Now this is not compulsory, but it's nice if you can do this. So now we're going to join the front and the back pieces together. This is how they come, all right? So I'll just place them right sides facing each other, pin them down and go over to the sewing machine and stitch it down. Alright guys, so I'm done pinning it down and this is what we have. I'll just go ahead and make a straight stitch on both sides. Alright guys, this is what I had after I was done stitching it down. You can see on this part our curve is actually showing, but on this other side it's looking as though the curve has become straight. That part is straight, but here is looking funny. So what you do is on this waist area, just break the bone a bit. You will notice where the waist starts from, so just break the bone there a bit, and then once you've done that, you go ahead and iron out your pieces. When you're ironing it out, the upper part that is straight, you iron it out straight. Now for this part which is going to be curved, you need to place it on your tailor's arm so that it doesn't now become flat when you iron it out. So when you're ironing out that part, you place it on your tailor's arm, but the other side you iron it straight. So by the time you're done, you notice that this area will retain its shape. Alright guys, so after I was done with the ironing, this is what it looks like. You can see the shape is still showing. It's not now looking flat. Alright, this shape, if you don't iron it well, it can start looking straight instead. Just the same thing that happens to your caging if you don't do it properly. So anyways, once you're through with this, just go ahead and join your actual fabric with the lining right sides facing each other and stitch around the neckline and the center back. So guys, after stitching and ironing it out, this is what I have. Now I noticed that on this area here, a part of the lining was showing over in front. So what I did was to cut out a piece of my fabric that I'm working with and use it to just pipe that area. You can see the same thing is happening on this side. So just cut out a piece of your fabric, just use it to fold in this area like this, like a bias. So fold it into two like this and just top stitch it from this end all the way to the other end to where it stops. That was what I did on this side, and you can see how neat it looks both on the inside and on the outside. And this is what our caging area is looking like. All right, so now this is it. Okay, I'm going to do that for the other side as well. And on this part, I'm going to be creating a bone channel. Now for this particular side, I'm going to be using a plastic bone, because the regular bone, there is no need to use a regular bone here because we are going to be passing it through from the inside. All right, so what you do is you just go ahead and cut out your bone nicely, and then you're going to like remove the excess by making sure it's smooth on the edges. And then the area that you create here, the bone channel, is just to sew a straight line across the end here. So the bone channel here, just go ahead and pass it through and then cut it out. This one, you just created a straight line very close to the edge to get that bone channel. So I'll go and finish up this area of the bias that is looking rough, and then place the bone on the other end, and then finally come and finish up this edge. Now to finish up this edge is very simple. Just go ahead and bring in a piece of your fabric that you're working with, and you're going to use it to serve as a bias. So you stitch it down first and then turn this over to the right side and use it to make a top stitch to cover up everything. So let's go ahead and do all of these things now. So now this is the first stitch I made all the way across the bottom part of the dress. This was after of the blouse, after placing the bone channels, the bones through the middle channel. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just trim off the excess I have on here. So now you're just going to go ahead and turn it over to the right side. All right, fold it in once like this and fold it again like a bias to finish this up, and that'll basically be it for the bottom part. So I'll just do it nicely and then back stitch at the beginning here, and then just continue to make my stitch until I get to the other end. So now I have done and ironed out the whole pieces, everything, after joining the bottom part and placing the bones to the center back. And this is what we have. You can see how the inside is looking neat alongside the front part as well. And our sharp waist shape is showing very prominently. So now the last thing is to place my eyelets at the back of this. Now my eyelets machine actually got spoiled, so I had to actually take this out for them to fix for me. So these are the eyelets that I have. If you don't have a machine, you can just have them fix it for you at the back. Guys, this is what it looks like after they were done placing it at the back for me. So yeah, that's basically all. This is the front and the back. Thank you so much for watching.